Hi, I'm out here in the rain with Birch to let you know about the lessons I learned from Birch over the last month and a half. And basically, the punchline is that Birch was less enthusiastic than I was about working together. It was meant to be the March newsletter, and it's really taken this long to figure out in what ways Birch was willing to work with me. So on spring equinox, Aria and I tapped this birch tree, and it was after I had gone around for a week or two talking to all of the different birch trees that we have here on this land to see if there was anyone who was available to do the tapping. You can gather birch sap similar to how you gather maple sap, and you can either drink it as the sap, which is like loaded with vitamins and minerals, loaded, or you can boil it down into a syrup. But I had no intention of making the birch sap into a syrup. It takes 120 gallons of the sap to make 1 gallon of syrup, compared to maple, which is 40 gallons of sap to 1 gallon of syrup, which is still a lot. But there's less sugar in the birch sap, which is the reason it takes so much to boil it down. But anyway, I just wanted to work with the sap, and this tree seemed to volunteer to do that. But when we tapped it on the equinox, the sap wasn't running yet. Birch is a little bit later season than maple, and the temperatures at night need to be above freezing for birch. And so it was fine. And I left it in until the sap did start running. But that was maybe my first indication that maybe the timing just was a little bit off. I was able to gather 1 gallon or 2 of the sap, and I drank it, and it was incredible and just feels very life-giving, this sap that comes out of the trees. And then we had a big windstorm, and not only was the bucket knocked off of the tree, which happens with the maples. So when you're tapping a tree, you have to drill a hole into the tree, which is kind of unfortunate, but they say it doesn't hurt the tree. You drill a hole into the tree and you put in the spout, like a little thing called a spire, where the sap flows out, and then you hang a bucket on that spire and it drips into the bucket. And so sometimes during maple season, a hard wind would come and the bucket would get knocked off, and you would, go out and collect it and put it back on. But the wind and this birch tree, not only did the bucket get knocked off, but the whole spire got ripped out of the tree. And so I did not put it back on. I was like, oh, okay. Are you trying to tell me something, birch tree? Are you trying to tell me something? And then I gathered some fallen twigs and branches that were resulting in the windstorm, and I worked with them to make a tea and a decoction. But it just wasn't hitting. It just wasn't hitting. And so I waited, and I was making offerings and sitting with the tree. But basically what I learned is that birch in particular, and I think trees in general, are a little bit harder to get to know than flowers and plants. 95% of the time when I approach a flower or a plant to establish a relationship and ask them if they want to work together, I get like a resounding like, hell yes, like we want to work with you. We have so much to show you. We want to share it all with you. And it's in my experience, a very enthusiastic yes. I mean, they're so open, right? Like, just look at a flower. A flower is like just standing there showing you its sex parts, right? It's like, here I am, like, let's do it. And the birch tree was kind of like, I don't really know you like that. Like, let's take this a little bit slower and get to know each other a little bit better first. And that was a bit of a humbling lesson for me. And I think that perhaps when I asked permission to tap the tree, either I wasn't listening as closely as I should have been, and I was kind of projecting my enthusiasm onto the tree, Or maybe the tree changed its mind, like as we started working together. I'm not really sure, but I do think that I will be spending a lot more time with Birch over the course of the year and really just sitting with it, right? Like sometimes this is the lesson, right? Sometimes the medicine of the plant and the lesson is just to sit with it and develop the relationship. And it takes as long as it takes. It takes as long as it takes. Like it can take years. Actually, that happened with the magnolia that we have here. I nurtured the magnolia and I still haven't gotten a real yes on working with the magnolia blossom medicines, but I'm taking care of it and pruning it and making sure that it's happy. And then maybe one day I'll get to work with the medicine of it. But that's not the point, right? Like the point is to establish the relationship. And I think that for me, even sometimes I forget this. I'm so eager to like see what the plant has to offer to me that I forget that it's meant to be a more reciprocal relationship, and maybe they're not always like super open in the beginning, or maybe ever, right? Like maybe I'll sit with this tree for years before I learn all the lessons that it has. I mean, obviously, I could sit with it for a lifetime without learning all of the lessons that it has. So full of wisdom and knowledge, but I do think that trees take a little bit longer to warm up, and that patience and really, really listening to them is important, and honoring whatever answer you get, right? I was so enthusiastic and like, I have to do the newsletter and I want to tell everybody about Birch. But Birch was like, maybe. But the good news is now the leaves are here and the leaves are ready to work with me. And that feels good. It feels really aligned. And you'll see below a recipe for just working with the leaves to make a simple tea. And I will continue to nurture this relationship and see what will come. And maybe it will just be that we just become better and better friends and nothing ever comes out of it that I can like extract from the tree. You know, maybe it's just like a nice relationship where the birch tree tells me stories. That would be nice.